how to make scratch-built Tatooine buildings for your Star Wars Legion games. Hi there and welcome to Good Enough Scenery. Today we're going to be making this exact building right here. You can make it, make these in any design that you want. This is the second way I'm doing the kind of the base to it. So let's get into how I am doing it. So to begin with, I've taken a couple of bits of 3mm MDF and that will form the base of the thing, and I've drawn out my design. I've tried to be a little bit neat about it so you can follow the lines later on. From here I've taken some XPS foam. This is one of the longer bits you get when you have edging pieces, and then I've scored the edges of it just so that when it does get curled into a curve in just a second, it provides a little bit less resistance and doesn't try and spring back quite as much. It is going to be getting covered, so it doesn't matter that it's got these slits. So getting the curve right around the edge to begin with, and then you'll see in a second I add some extra glue around here just to hold it into place a little bit better, because the bit I did originally, that is the bit that's actually going to be seen. This bit here behind is behind the scenes, shall we say, so not going to be seen, so it doesn't matter if it's a little bit all over the place, but what you want it to be is nice and secure, so it's going to look a little something like that. And next up, just doing a similar thing again, so getting a bit of XPS foam and just sticking it around the visible part first, making sure I get the curve right. And then with this design, each layer is going in ever so slightly. So it's like a tapered, curved tower that I'm going for here. And then, like I said, gluing the rear part of it and then building it up until you get to the height that the walls are going to be. After this point, you're going to need to have kind of full circles of XPS foam rather than the kind of C shapes I was using before. Now you can get them to the right size and then superglue, just touching the ends of superglued XPS together, it pretty much sets straight away. It's actually quite unbelievable how quickly it does it. I'll show you that in just a second. But putting that on and just building up a few layers of this, again tapering it in and doing this until the point that the sphere kind of top that you'll see in a minute fits in. So there's one more layer after this, and I'll show you this. So this is getting cut to size. There you go, just making sure that is the right size there. Once we know that it is, just a dab of super glue, touch it together, and within what 2 seconds that is now held. This is the final layer, just putting it on top. Now, when you're seeing that I'm using super glue, it doesn't matter whether you're using super glue or hot glue gun for putting this XPS foam together. But for the polystyrene board here, it will have to be the hot glue gun because the super glue just tends to melt it. So this is the top sphere. I got a pack of these on Amazon, all sorts of different sizes, so not very much money. Enough for a lot of scenery to be built if you're going to be making scenery of this nature. And for the board, there's 2 pieces, so I've just kind of bonded them together with a couple of pieces of MDF board, just so the 2 pieces act as one. From here, it's just a case of building up the walls. There's nothing particularly complicated here. All I'm doing is taking strips of foam that I've cut. They're about 1 centimetre thick, but the thickness really doesn't matter. And then just holding them into place, not bothering doing stuff with a ruler. It doesn't have to be that accurate. Just making sure that it's going to fit into place, using the hot glue gun and sticking it down. So that's the first layer done. And you can just repeat this as many times as you want. You can leave gaps for windows if you like, entirely up to you, until it gets to something that looks a bit like that. And you can see that is the height that I'm going for. So you've left a window at the back there and one on the left. Next up was to do the roof, so I just took a bit of foam and then estimated the curve that it would fit into. I nearly got it spot on straight away, but not quite. But then cut this down to be the correct width, and then just had to do a little bit of a tweak on the curve there, just so that fit into place. With that kind of just resting there, I knew what size to make the next piece. Important to get it the right way around, but this is all going to get covered in plaster anyway. And then I did a similar thing with the bit at the front, and then I'm just sticking these down with super glue. And with super glue you get a very fast bond. With the hot glue gun you get a little bit more time to kind of move things around. So that's the kind of the differences between them, but once they're bonded, they're bonded. So in terms of the strength of the bond, from my experience, it doesn't matter too much. So this is where we got to here. And now we're going to add in some more details with some more of these polystyrene balls, which cut in half very easily with a hot wire cutter or a knife, as I showed you just then. And then just putting these on top as decoration. all of them just stuck down with the hot glue gun. Now, just to finish off in terms of the foam side of things, I just wanted to add some further details around the edges, just because sometimes you see this in the Tatooine buildings, that they have these, I mean, I'm not sure if they're functional in terms of the building, but in terms of this, they are literally just bits of foam stuck to the edge, just to add a little bit more interest, I guess. So just cutting bits to length and then putting them down. And the final piece of the structure here is the doorway. So once again, just a piece of foam, super glue on the bottom of it, super glue at each end, and then just holding that in place until it decides it's going to stop fighting you and trying to stop unbending. Now on to the messy bit. This is just dry plaster filler stuff. I think I bought a massive box of it for about £3 on Amazon. There's a link in the description to buy that if you want the same stuff. And essentially you just slap this stuff on and cover up as much of the foam as you can or want to. Now you can apply this as smoothly or as roughly as you would like to. It's not a difficult thing to make it all smooth. It takes a little bit longer, but it's not a difficult thing to do. You decide yourself how rough or smooth you want it to look. I was told in the previous video that I'd put it on too roughly, but that was kind of my choice rather than an inability to do it. But you do it however you want to. If you want it really nice and smooth, then you need to take whatever you're doing it with. You want a nice flat edge and just kind of spread at 45 degrees like this. You see how it instantly just goes pretty smooth. For this, I was in there for kind of not quite smooth, because I don't want it to be fully smooth. Make sure you don't plaster over the windows like I nearly did then. And this is kind of what you end up with. And from here, you can sand it down. You can just use completely regular sandpaper just to kind of smooth off any places where you're not happy with how it's ended up looking. And that's the advantage. It's better to go kind of too chunky on it than not chunky enough, because you can sand it down if you do go a little chunky on it. Now I'm adding PVA glue to any foam that's left over, any polystyrene, just because it seals it in terms of getting paint on. So I'm undercoating with a kind of brownish paint that I've got here, and it's going to be painted over again afterwards. So whole building gets covered in this kind of brownish paint. There you go. I'm not sure what's going on with the camera angle there, but here we are. And then the top coat is this very much sand coloured paint colour that I mixed up. Just play around, and I mean, I didn't buy that. I just mixed up colours until they looked this colour, just covering the whole thing in that kind of sandy colour, and it dries like that. And then to kind of finish off in terms of the decoration of the outside, just dry brushing the whole thing with white. It just picks up the edges, makes them more highlighted. This adds a bit more kind of definition and detail to the building. So went around the whole building doing exactly this, and I was pretty happy with it, how it turned out. And then finally, basically I chucked PVA glue all over the wood at the bottom, and then on a few areas at the top where I feel like some sand might have been. Started with some heavier aggregate here, some bigger stones, and then covering the rest of it in a much finer sand. It's better to do it in this order because it means that the other stones stick well. And from here I then sprayed it with glue, and like watered down PVA glue and isopropyl alcohol, which really helps to hold all of the things in place. And that was it. And these are a couple of the other buildings I've done as well. Here you can see the finished product on this one. Whether you do it with an XPS foam base or an EVA foam base, it doesn't matter. But if you've enjoyed this, like, comment and subscribe.